I always thought if my marriage ever fell apart, I'd see it coming. I thought there'd be some massive argument, slammed doors, maybe a dramatic confession. I didn't expect it to start unraveling at a fundraiser with catered hors d'oeuvres and modern art. It was a cold Saturday evening in February, the kind that settles into your bones and makes you wish you'd just stayed inside. I remember checking the weather that morning and thinking, please, let this be the kind of night that gets canceled. No such luck. Lauren had been buzzing about the event for over a week. Some exclusive gala her firm was sponsoring at the Cleveland Art Center. She said it would be great exposure, and that we needed to start blending into new circles. I'd heard that phrase before. New circles usually meant people I had nothing in common with. Designers, architects, influencers, people with tastefully messy hair and curated Instagram feeds. But I agreed to go, mostly because I was tired of fighting. Things between us had been off. Not exactly bad, but not good either. Like a song slightly out of tune. Barely noticeable at first, but after a while, it grates on you. Lauren was in the bathroom for almost an hour before we left. When she stepped out, she looked stunning. Black satin dress, red lipstick, heels that clicked with confidence. She didn't look like my wife. She looked like someone auditioning for a different life. You ready? She asked, checking her phone mid-sentence. I nodded, grabbing my coat. She didn't ask how she looked. She didn't need to. She already knew. The ride to the venue was quiet. She scrolled through emails, typed a few texts, and laughed softly at one of them. I asked who it was. She just said work stuff and angled the screen away from me. The Cleveland Art Center was lit up like a magazine spread. Glowing lanterns outside, smooth jazz playing as we walked in. The place smelled like money and perfume. A valet took our coats, and before I could even ask where we were headed, she gave me a quick, polite smile. Go grab a drink, she said, already scanning the room like she was looking for someone. I'll come find you in a bit. That was it. She vanished into the crowd before I could say anything else. Not even a proper introduction. Just left me standing there like a misplaced accessory. I tried not to let it bother me. I got myself a bourbon and wandered around the gallery, pretending to admire the abstract pieces on the wall. A few people nodded politely, but no one approached. I wasn't part of this scene. I was the husband, the one who held purses at events and smiled in Christmas cards. The background character in Lauren's high-definition life. 15 minutes went by, then 20, then 30. Still no sign of her. I was finishing my second drink when I saw her, near the bar, laughing. She was leaning slightly toward a man in a gray suit. He looked like he had never known a day without confidence. Trim beard, tailored blazer, the kind of guy who keeps one hand in his pocket like he's modeling for a catalog. Lauren's hand was on his chest, casually, deliberately, and his arm was draped around her lower back like it belonged there. I stood behind a tall sculpture, half hidden, watching. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Could have been a minute, could have been 10. But the worst part wasn't seeing her touch him. The worst part was her smile. I knew that smile. It wasn't the fake PR one she used for clients. It wasn't the tired one she gave me after long days. It was soft, real, like she was truly happy in that moment, like she'd forgotten I existed. My first instinct was to walk over, to say something, to make her look me in the eye. But instead, I pulled out my phone, zoomed in, snapped a few pictures. I don't know why. Maybe for proof. Maybe just so I'd stop gaslighting myself later, wondering if I'd imagine the whole thing. As I turned to leave, I felt eyes on me. I glanced back, and there she was. She'd seen me. Her expression didn't change. She didn't flinch. She just looked at me like I was a stranger at the door. She didn't follow me. She didn't call out. She just stayed with him. I walked out into the cold. I didn't feel it. Not really. My hands were shaking, but not from the temperature. More from that sudden adrenaline crash you get when your body realizes something important is over. Like how your limbs feel after a car almost hits you. I sat in the car for a while, just staring at the windshield. My bourbon breath fogged up the glass. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a text from her. Some explanation, some excuse. Maybe a frantic call. Nothing. I drove around the city in silence. No music. Just the low hum of the heater and the occasional ping from a stoplight. She didn't come home that night. I waited until midnight. Then 1. Then 2. Still nothing. At 2:23 a.m., I finally went to bed. I laid on her side. It still smelled like her perfume, the one she used to save for anniversaries. The one she wore that night. I kept thinking about the way she touched his tie. The way he held her like he'd done it 100 times before. And for the first time since we got married, I didn't miss her. I just wanted answers. You'd think after something like that, seeing your wife wrapped around another man at a public event, you'd have all the confirmation you need. But no, the human brain's a master at denial. I told myself maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was just some drunk flirtation. Maybe I was the one being dramatic. Maybe. But in the days that followed, the truth didn't just reveal itself. It settled into my gut like a stone. Lauren came home the next morning like nothing had happened. No apology. No explanation. Just walked in around 9 a.m., carrying a coffee like she'd gone out for a morning jog. "You left early," she said casually, setting her phone down on the counter, not even looking at me. I was standing at the sink, staring out the window like it might offer some clarity. I turned slowly, studying her. Her makeup was smudged. Her dress from the night before peeking out from under a too-big coat I didn't recognize. "I wasn't feeling well," I said. "You looked busy." She gave a faint smile. "It was a work thing. Lots of mingling. Sorry I didn't check in." That was it. "No, where did you go?" "No, why'd you leave?" "Just business as usual." And from that moment on, something shifted. Over the next few weeks, Lauren became a version of herself I hadn't seen in years. She was overly sweet, like a hostess trying to keep a bad Yelp review from happening. Cooked elaborate dinners, risottos, lamb chops, fresh-baked bread. She started wearing dresses around the house again, spritzing perfume before I even got home. She bought me a watch just because. A real one, not some Amazon knockoff. She'd never done that before. On the surface, it looked like affection, but something about it felt hollow, calculated. And then there was the phone. She was on it constantly, tapping away with this dazed little half-smile like a teenager in love. If I walked into the room, she'd immediately flip its screen down. If I got close, she'd pull it into her lap, her posture tightening. She never used to be like that. We used to share Spotify accounts and grocery lists and the occasional dumb meme during work breaks. Now, her phone was a fortress. One night, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. Well, I was watching. She was pretending. Her eyes were glued to her screen, barely reacting to anything on the TV. I leaned over and kissed her shoulder. Just a small gesture, hoping to bridge whatever gap had formed between us. She flinched. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough that I felt it. "Everything okay?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Yeah. Why wouldn't it be?" I didn't answer. I just nodded and turned back to the screen. But my stomach was in knots. That's when the dreams started. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced I'd heard her whispering in another room. Sometimes I'd walk the hall, expecting to catch her on the phone. Never did. She was either asleep or faking it well. One night I asked her outright, "Is there something going on with you?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been different. You're always on your phone. You come home late. You don't talk to me like you used to. And after the fundraiser." She cut me off. "The fundraiser? You're still on about that." I held her gaze. "I saw you, Lauren. With him." Her eyes narrowed, lips parting like she was about to launch into a defense. But instead, she laughed. Short, clipped, forced. "God, you're being paranoid." That word stuck in my brain like a splinter. Paranoid is a dangerous word in a relationship. Once it's used, it rewrites the power dynamic. Suddenly, I wasn't concerned. I was unhinged. I wasn't observant, I was crazy. And she leaned into it, too. Made me feel like I was the one losing grip. Every time I brought something up, her absence, the phone, her sudden aversion to Macy. She tossed that word at me like a smoke bomb. You're just overthinking. You've been stressed lately. Maybe you should talk to someone. The gaslighting wasn't even subtle. It was systemic. Like she'd read a book on how to deflect accountability and decided to follow it chapter by chapter. But then came the perfume. She changed it. Out of nowhere. Lauren had worn the same scent for years. Warm vanilla and amber. Familiar. Mate. One night, she walked past me and I caught something sharp and floral. Something unfamiliar. I asked about it. She smiled and said, "Just something new I'm trying." But it wasn't for me. She started sleeping in matching pajama sets. Bought new lingerie that I never saw her wear for me. Started doing yoga again, early mornings, long sessions, always alone. She started saying things like, "I need space," or "I need to feel more like myself," but only when I got too close. The rest of the time, sweet smiles, home-cooked meals, little kisses before bed. It wasn't care. It was camouflage. That's when I started watching more closely, tracking patterns. Not obsessively, just attentively. I started noticing how she'd get texts late at night, smile and walk out of the room. How she'd take work calls with the door closed. How she'd sit in her car an extra 10 minutes after coming home, just staring at her phone before finally stepping inside. There was one night, maybe 2 weeks after the gala, that sealed it. She came home late again. Said she'd had to stay late for a campaign launch. Her eyes were glassy, cheeks flushed. Not quite drunk, but not entirely sober either. I reached for her hand as she passed me in the hallway. "Hey," I said. "You okay?" She hesitated. Her hand lingered in mine, just for a moment. Then she pulled away. "I'm tired," she said. "Don't start." "Start what?" She didn't answer. Just walked into the bedroom and shut the door. I stood there, hand still half raised, heart sinking. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was witnessing the quiet, methodical breakdown of a marriage, one carefully disguised as routine. And whatever was going on with Lauren, it had already passed the point of no return. I always thought I'd want the truth, that if something was going on behind my back, I'd rather know than live in the dark. But when the truth actually showed up, when it laid itself bare in black and white pixels on my screen, it didn't feel like clarity. It felt like drowning. It started with a laptop. A couple years ago, when Lauren and I upgraded our tech, we set up a shared iCloud system so we could access files, calendars, and photos from either of our devices. It was one of those little efficiency tricks couples do when they still trust each other. Back when us meant something seamless. I'd almost forgotten it existed. But one afternoon, as I was looking for a work file on our MacBook, I saw it, her name, synced up. A folder labeled Creative Sync. She must have assumed I never used the shared notes anymore, that I wouldn't see what was tucked inside. She was wrong. First, it was little things. Grocery lists, drafts for pitches, a recipe for some pumpkin curry she'd made a few weeks back. But then I saw a folder that didn't quite fit. Session logs. Inside were notes. Dozens of them. Most were titled with generic labels. Thoughts, check-in, personal growth. But a few had a different name attached. Miles. I clicked one open. "You smell better than any office I've ever worked in. And when you talk rough, God, I forget where I am." My heart dropped. I opened another. "He could never handle someone like me. I have to shrink myself to be around him. You see the full version of me. You want her." There it was. The unfiltered, mate version of Lauren that I hadn't seen in months. The one she had reserved for someone else. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. Part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Just sit there, drink something strong, and try to forget. But I couldn't. My pulse was in my ears. My vision tunneled. I kept reading. Every note was like peeling away another layer of her mask. She wrote about him like he was some spiritual awakening. She spoke about me like I was a prison cell. Words like repressed, smothered, and emotionally dependent were thrown around like diagnoses. And then I found it, A voice memo. Synced to the cloud. Buried in a folder she must have thought was private. I clicked play. Her voice came through the speakers. Breathy, and asterisk mate. Soaked in that performative vulnerability she used to save for me. Only now it was meant for someone named Trevor. You make me feel safe and reckless. Like I can undo myself around you without having to apologize for it later. I paused it. I couldn't take more than 10 seconds. This wasn't therapeutic journaling. This was infatuation. This was a woman planning her escape from a life she'd already emotionally left behind. When she walked in that night, everything inside me was silent. Not calm, just still. The way the air gets before a thunderstorm. She was tanned. In Cleveland. In February. Hey babe, she said cheerfully, holding a boutique wine bag. I picked this up from that place on Fifth You Love. I didn't smile. Didn't speak. I turned the screen toward her and hit play on the memo. Her expression didn't shift. At first, I thought she was in shock. Then she scoffed. You went through my private stuff? That was her opening line. Not, I'm sorry. Not, let me explain. Just a deflection. You made it really easy, I said, my voice calm. Shared folders. Cloud sync. You remember. She sat down like we were about to have a civilized debate over dinner. This is exactly the problem, you know? You've always been so controlling. You never trusted me. I blinked slowly. You wrote that I could never handle someone like you. She shrugged. I was working through things. With a professional. A professional? I raised an eyebrow. You're calling Trevor a therapist? She didn't flinch. He's a licensed consultant. My firm brought him in for executive wellness support. We had sessions. He helped me unpack things. Unpack things? I repeated, nodding. Like emotional suppression. The prison of monogamy. How I'm apparently an anchor dragging you into mediocrity. I never said that. You did, I said, voice steady. Right before the part about how you love when he talks rough. That's when she snapped. You're twisting this, she shouted, standing up. This is a violation. You have no right to invade my privacy, and we *p*nize my words. We *p*nize her own words. That's how she was framing it. I pulled out my phone. Fine, I said. Then maybe you'd prefer to hear it from your own voice. I hit play again, this time a different memo. This one wasn't poetic. It wasn't some emotional deep dive. It was unfiltered, descriptive, explicit. She called him my tether. She said being with him felt like stepping into oxygen. She talked about needing to hide how she glows when she comes home from his place. She froze. Her lips parted. Her face paled. And still no apology. Instead, she grabbed the phone from my hand, threw it across the couch, and screamed, You don't get to do this. You don't get to corner me like this. I didn't move. You already left me, I said quietly. I'm just asking you to admit it. There was a pause. A moment where she could have leaned into honesty, even if it was late. Instead, she straightened her posture, like she was in a courtroom. You've always made me feel small, she said. Like I had to earn space in my own home. Trevor helped me realize that. So this is my fault? I asked. No, she said, eyes burning. But it's not just mine either. I let out a breath. Not a sigh. Not relief. Just the pressure leaving my chest. That's all I needed to know, I said. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And then she left. No bags. No threats. No promises to fix things. She walked out like someone who'd rehearsed it. She thought I'd fall apart. But the truth is, that was the moment I started acting. The moment I realized that this wasn't a tragedy. It was a transition. One I would walk through with my eyes wide open. After she left that night, the silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. Cold, clean, precise. Every room felt like it had been carved out, emptied of the version of us that used to live there. No more tension, no more lies, but also no answers. Just the echo of everything unsaid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there on the edge of our bed, staring at the closet where her coat still hung, half-zipped. There was no closure in her departure, just an unfinished sentence. So I started writing the ending myself. The next morning I got up early, showered, shaved. I made coffee and drank it in silence, the way I used to before Lauren started sleeping in and leaving the kitchen full of her mess. Something about the normalcy of it all made me feel grounded, like I still had control over something. Then I went into the study, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the old cardboard file box we kept for important documents. Inside were utility bills, tax returns, appliance manuals. And tucked under it all, the keys to her co-working space and an old hard drive we hadn't used since we moved into the house. I grabbed those along with her laptop and some of the notebooks she left lying around. I packed everything into a new box, labeled it with a sticky note that just said, Lauren. It didn't feel bitter. It felt necessary. I was drawing lines again, separating mine from hers. Then I called a lawyer. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for clarity. I told him the basics, gave him the timeline, and said I didn't want drama. I wanted out. Clean. Efficient. No back and forth, no games. Do you have documentation? He asked. I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. Yes, I said. Screensh *TS. Voice notes. The timeline. Her words, not mine. There was a pause. You're doing the right thing, he said. And you're ahead of where most people are when they walk in here. I thanked him and hung up. My hand was still shaking slightly as I set the phone down. It wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. My body hadn't caught up to the new reality yet. But I wasn't done. I needed to know who this man really was, the one she kept calling Trevor. The one she wrote poems for and whispered into voice memos like a high schooler with a crush. She'd mentioned his last name once in a note. T. Miles. That was enough. I called her firm pretending to be a potential client, said I was interested in private brand coaching and wanted to speak directly with someone who worked with VIP clients. The receptionist hesitated, then said, Oh, you must mean Trevor Miles. He's technically a freelance consultant, but he's available by appointment. Bingo. Freelance. Yet somehow tied deeply enough to the firm that he had access to their top-tier clientele. She had brought him in. She had cleared the way for him to embed himself not just in her work, but in her life. I dug through our shared Google Drive. Yes, she forgot to desync that too, and found an old itinerary from a design conference in New York. 2 names listed under accommodation booking confirmation. Lauren H. Trevor M. Same check-in. Same checkout. I copied the address of the hotel. Then I checked the timestamps on some of her voice notes. They matched. That was enough for me. But the final nail came from one of her emails. A forwarded message from the studio confirming a private consult scheduled at an address just across town. A trendy little co-working loft that I vaguely remembered helping her move boxes into a year ago. So I drove over there. And there it was. Lauren's car. Parked out front. Not her usual spot either. It was pulled around the back like she was trying to be invisible. I parked 2 blocks away, walked into a nearby cafe, and sat by the window. Ordered a black coffee and waited. An hour later, they came out together. Lauren and Trevor. Arm in arm. They weren't rushing. They weren't hiding. He said something that made her laugh and she leaned into him. Not just comfortably, but familiar. Like they'd done this 100 times before. I snapped a few photos. Again, not to use. Just to remember. Just to silence the voice in my head that still whispered maybe. They hailed a cab. I followed. They ended up at a hotel. Not one of the big chain spots, but one of those boutique places that markets itself as discreet luxury. They walked in holding hands. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't need to. I just sat in my car, staring at the glowing entrance, feeling everything I'd suspected calcify into reality. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a double life. Lauren didn't fall into someone else's arms because of one bad fight or some midlife confusion. She built a second home with someone else while living under my roof. And I knew then I wasn't going to be quiet about it. There's a strange kind of strength that comes with certainty. I don't mean the fake certainty you cling to when you're trying to talk yourself down from suspicion. I mean the real kind. The kind that arrives when the last puzzle piece falls into place and the picture is clear. I didn't need to search anymore. I didn't need to guess. I'd seen the truth with my own eyes. Lauren was gone. Maybe not physically, not yet, but emotionally, morally, relationally. She'd been gone for a long time. That clarity changed everything. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't desperate. I was methodical. The morning after I followed her and Trevor to that boutique hotel, I sat down at my desk and started organizing. Not out of spite, just necessity. I sorted every screenshot *T, every message, every photo into a single encrypted folder titled simply, Contingency. Not evidence. Not revenge. Just a quiet archive of what had really happened here. I wrote out a timeline, date of the fundraiser, date of the New York trip, date of the executive wellness sessions. I labeled voice memos. I printed emails. I even flagged a few calendar invites she'd stupidly synced to our shared Google Calendar last fall. Back when they were still being careful. When everything was neatly filed and backed up, I sent it all to my lawyer. I met him that afternoon at a downtown office, modern building, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place where clean divorces are bought and paid for in silence. I don't want to fight, I told him. But I don't want pity either. I want a clean break. She doesn't get to spin this. He nodded like he'd heard it 100 times. Maybe he had. But he took it seriously. Understood, he said. And this documentation? This makes your position very strong. Good, I said. Then we do it now. Serve her before she has a chance to pivot. He paused. Do you want to confront her first? No, I said. I already did. She made her move. This is mine. But I wasn't finished. I knew Lauren, knew how she operated, knew that her entire career was built on reputation, carefully curated relationships, the illusion of being untouchable. So I went to work on a second front, not to destroy her, but to remind her that choices echo. I created a new email address, anonymous, no identifiers, and I wrote a short, concise message to her firm's HR department. No accusations, no rage, just facts. To whom it may concern, I am writing to inform you, anonymously, that a senior employee has been engaging in a personal relationship with a contracted consultant. This relationship includes use of company-sponsored events and resources for private purposes. I believe it may represent a breach of internal ethics policies. Attached are photographs taken at an off-site location during what was labeled a client event. Do with this what you will. Respectfully, a concerned party. That was it. I attached a few of the hotel images. Tasteful, nothing scandalous, just enough to suggest what was going on. And I hit send. And then I waited. She came home that night around 6:30. Walked in like nothing had happened. Set her purse down, kicked off her shoes, and started going on about how long her day had been. I was waiting for her calmly at the kitchen table. There was a cardboard box beside me. Not big. Not messy, just final, a clean cut. When she noticed it, she stopped mid-sentence. What's that? I stood up. Your things. From the study. Your backup drive, your notes, your keys to the co-working space. Everything personal is in there. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I already spoke to a lawyer, I said. You'll be served tomorrow. It took her a few seconds to catch up. And then she snapped. You're spying on me? No, I said. You left a trail. She walked over to the box and flipped it open, rifling through it like there was some hidden trap inside. Then she turned to me, her voice sharp and trembling. You've been watching me like some sick detective? I didn't raise my voice. No. I started paying attention. There's a difference. Her tone shifted instantly, whiplash. Anger gave way to tears, the practiced kind. The ones that come fast and full but never quite reach the eyes. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. Don't throw everything away over him. I didn't mean for it to get so complicated. You mean you didn't mean to get caught? She stepped closer. No, I mean I lost myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I was confused. You and we stopped being close. I needed something, someone, to make me feel alive again. That word. Alive. It hit like a slap. You could have talked to me, I said. Instead, you wrote poems about how I was suffocating you and whispered secrets into someone else's hands. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, voice breaking. I looked her in the eyes. You didn't want to get caught. There's a difference. She collapsed onto the chair across from me, hands over her face. For a moment, the room was silent except for her sobs. But it wasn't grief. It was panic. Regret. Please, she said again. I don't want to lose everything. I reached into the envelope beside me and pulled out a neatly printed list. One copy of the digital folder's contents. I slid it across the table. You already did. She stared at it, saw the dates, the timestamps, the headers from her own emails, and her whole posture changed. The performance dropped. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw it in her face. She knew the game was over. Not because I caught her, but because I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't going to beg for answers anymore. I wasn't going to argue or barter or cry or scream. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Mark, she said quietly. What happens now? You move out, I said. You keep whatever dignity you've got left. You walk away before this gets any uglier. And what if I don't? I looked her dead in the eye. Then I stopped playing nice. She didn't say anything after that. She just sat there, frozen, staring at the box like it was a casket, like she was mourning the version of her life she thought she could keep. Half-truths, full lies, and all. That night, she didn't sleep in the bedroom. She didn't sleep in the house at all. By morning, she was gone. No note, no apology, just absence. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking around in someone else's lie. I felt like I was starting to wake up. After she moved out, the silence felt different. Not tense, not hostile, just mine. I erased every trace of her. Rearranged furniture, boxed old photos, dumped her forgotten shampoo bottles. Even the air felt clearer. I started waking up early again, going on runs, texting old friends without guilt or explanation. One night, Jake dragged me to a local bar. That's where I met Brooke. She wasn't flashy or intense, just real. We talked nonsense. She laughed with her whole face. The next morning, we had coffee in a quiet diner, and for the first time in months, I wasn't looking backward. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for peace, and I found it.